Good morning, everybody. I'll try and be relatively brief with this, but there's a number of things that I wanted to discuss. A couple of years back now, we had what they call a coffee morning with Queenslandrail management, and there's 6 people, 3 from the public and 3 from management, and all agreed that there needs to be a 15-minute service out to the airport, not 30 minutes at any time. In other words, all day 15 minutes. And it was designed for that, built, actually operated as that initially, and trains terminated at Roma Street and ran back to the airport. In other words, a shuttle service, and then there's the Gold Coast trains, of course, as you know, through operate. Secondly, we said that we all agreed that a 3-car train every 15 minutes is better by far than a 6-car train every half an hour. And that could be achieved on the Ipswich line for a start. It could be achieved as all stations to Darra, then Indooroopilly, Milton, Roma Street and through to Bowen Hills and beyond. In other words, if its services are going to Caboolture, you do Eagle Junction, Northgate, Petrie and all stations to Caboolture. Now that kind of service could be operated with a 6-car train every half an hour, and there'd be a new platform built, actually be an island platform 11 and 12 in the junction where the Echo line goes round. It's already working, it's working 7 days a week, trains running there empty, and also long distance trains like the Tilt train, Spirit of Queensland, Spirit of the Outback and so on use that line all the time today. But a station would be built there with subway, pedestrian subways into platform 10 and out onto the street, and there'd be another station at Normanby next to the bus station, so there'd be interchanges there, and trains would continue on and come back out at Bowen Hills and come into the city and then back out to their destination again, and vice versa. So you wouldn't have really any more trains than we have now running through the city tunnels. And yet you could also introduce 9-car trains in the peak hour with only Ipswich, Darra, Indooroopilly, perhaps Milton, and then of course Roma Street, Central and Bowen Hills, extended to 9-car platforms. Now a similar idea could be used for the Gold Coast line, where only limited platforms would be increased, and maybe like Beenleigh, and then they might decide that they're really busy at Robina, that could be increased in size, but they have to make a decision on that. And the Beenleigh line itself, there might only be about 2 stations that would deserve to get 9-car platforms. So that's something for management to do a complete feasibility study on, and see where all their patronage comes from and is going to, in other words, in the peak hour. That would save problems in planning and building this Cross River Rail, which is many years off. I mentioned that at the time in writing. Nothing's been done, and the Ipswich trains should be expresses all day too, by the way, so I'll mention that as well, and training guards to be drivers, all of that would be included in the concept. And something totally new to Queenslandrail would be set timetables all day with peak hour trains slotted into those timetables. In other words, if you ran 4 trains an hour, you would run, say for example, as I said, two all stations trains an hour and 2 expresses. You'd have Super Express 9-car trains running 3 or 4 minutes ahead of the regular train and conveying the bulk of passengers for the peak hour into the city. Now, these are things that ought to be considered and introduced, in fact, by Queenslandrail, but we now would move on to other issues. I've seen a NGR train with graffiti on the side of it, big tag, on the side, painted on the side of the train. I've seen the first of the scratched windows in the NGR. Primarily only yesterday I saw a door window with scratches on it, and I thought, well, how long before the rest of the train is scratched? Now they've all got closed circuit TV, and as my daughter pointed out, there was someone using, I call it what public media, Facebook. We're talking Facebook and other, other sites, shaming people who have been filmed shoplifting, for example. Do the same thing. Film anyone that is doing the scratching. Have them arrested if possible, but certainly shame them by saying, has anyone seen this person in the public? Please, please alert the police. And there should be a zero tolerance policy introduced where they automatically receive a $1,000 fine or they go to jail, and then they are made to clean up their graffiti if that's what they won't be able to do the windows. I doubt they won't be able to fix them. They've got to stop this situation where every window on the metropolitan trains in Brisbane is scratched. This is becoming a joke. Now, the other thoughts are including the fact that the long distance trains could be fixed up, and they're not. I'm talking about the Westlander and the Inlander. They are trains of shame. They're the only place in the world where crew of a train is given a sleeping berth and the passengers have to sit up or lay on the floor. This is an absurd situation. The roomette cars should never have been destroyed in the way they were with that ridiculous lounge they've put into some of them. It should have been converted like the Spirit of the Outback for some roomettes and some twinettes to a maximum of 10 passengers per car, with 4 being reserved for crew. 4 roomettes as they are right now. That would have fixed the problem. And then there's dining cars with a counter cut into the kitchen, like out of the wall, where passengers can go and buy. One person could be serving in the dining car. You buy your food, you go and sit at the tables and you consume your food, and you go back to your seat and so on. I just thought I'd put those thoughts to everybody right away. And there are other issues I'd love to discuss as well, but we might do that some other time. Right now, I just like Queenslandrail to understand what is going on, to put a stop to what's going on with those scratch windows, to consider what they're doing with that Inlander and Westlander. And personally, in the case of the Inlander, I'd rather see it operating cans to Mount Isa twice a week, which can be done, and market that as a reef to the Outback service and tours, and operate tours of Mount Isa and so on. Just as they're done with the Spirit of the Outback, people can go out on one day and have a few days out that way and pick up the train on the following service. Anyway, guys, I thought I'd put some of these ideas out there. I'd welcome your comments. Just to say civil and polite. I don't want any abuse. This is of course going on to YouTube and will go on to Facebook. So I do welcome input, and thank you for viewing.